Hey, this is Charles with Rocky Mountain ATV MC. Today I'm going to show you how to install a Magura clutch on a Honda CRF 450R. A common complaint with 450s and other full-size dirt bikes with the cable clutch is a lever that's hard to pull in. Now if this is the case, it can be because of a lack of maintenance. You might just need to lube this clutch cable. It could be frayed, or you could even have internal worn out parts on this clutch perch up here. Another thing that happens is people put heavy duty springs in the clutch to keep it from slipping. Now on these older bikes like this one, the clutch is usually hard to pull just because you have a combination of a lot of different things that are worn out. If you have any of these problems, that's when the Magura clutch comes into play. So the nice thing about it, they claim up to 25% lighter pull depending on the model. They come pre-bled and they're self-adjusting for both clutch expansion and wear. Another great thing about these clutches is that there's zero maintenance. That means no more having to lube your cable. So these clutches, they're actually pretty easy to install. A lot of people think they're hard to install, but if you can replace your clutch cable, then you can install one of these Magura clutches. Now we're working on an 05 CRF 450R, and this bike is part of our Roach to Racing series, where we take this bike all the way down to the frame, and right now we're building everything back up, and then we're gonna take it racing. So check that out on our channel. And this process, it's gonna be the same for CRF 450Rs from 2002 to 2008, but this process should work for most dirt bikes. So let's go ahead and get this on. To do this job, we're using our Magura Hydraulic Clutch, some common hand tools, rags, safety glasses, and we'll also be referencing the user manual that came with our clutch kit and our model specific service manual for more information, proper procedures, and specs. The first thing we need to do is gain access to where this clutch cable actually routes. So to do that, I'll start by removing this seat. Next, we'll remove the left side shroud, louver, and radiator mounting bolts. Even though we're removing the mounting bolts for this radiator, we're not removing any of the lines or draining any of the coolant. We're just doing this so we can get clearance to mount the new Magura clutch. After that, we'll loosen up this nut on the end of the clutch cable. And then we'll just leave it like that for a second. On our bike, we need to remove this oil cap to remove these two bolts for this clutch cable mounting bracket. And I'm just gonna cover that hole up with a rag right now. That way we keep any dirt from getting in there. And we'll loosen up both of these mounting bolts. So now that we have the mounting bolts out of the way, we'll disconnect the clutch cable. Bring that around. I'll finish loosening up this nut on the end of the clutch cable. And we'll separate this bracket from the cable itself. Then we'll reinstall both of these bolts without that bracket. Now we'll reinstall this oil cap. Moving back up to the handlebar area, we'll remove the number plate. So the reason we remove the number plate, we need to get access. We have our clutch cable routing through this bracket, and there's no way we can run the new one through it without loosening this bracket up. So to do that, we'll remove the CDI. And then we have a bolt holding this bracket in place. So we'll just loosen that bolt up. So after that, we'll remove the hot start cable from this clutch perch. So to do that, we'll pull this rubber cover back and we'll just slide it out like that. Before we pull this clutch cable through, what we'll do, we've got a zip tie down here. We'll just cut that off, and then we have a retaining bracket. We'll just remove the clutch cable from that. And now we can pull this clutch cable all the way through. And when you do this, pay attention to how it was routed. So we've got our kill switch wire in the way of pulling this clutch perch off. So I'm gonna cut this cable tie, and then we'll remove both bolts on the clutch perch. Now we're ready to install the Magura clutch. To do this, it does mount a little bit differently. And we'll just hang the slave cylinder off to the side for a second. We'll put our master cylinder into place, and it's just held in by one bolt on top. So we'll adjust this up a little better later on, but we'll just set it in place for now. Now, depending what bike you're installing this on, you may or may not have a hot start cable. If it's a carbureted bike, you should have this cable. And our kit, it actually came with two options for the hot start cable to mount it up. And ours fits this bigger mounting hole. So we will use this bracket and the other hardware that came in the kit. So to mount this up, we will remove this rubber cover, set that out of the way. And then on the bottom, we have an 8mm nut. So we'll loosen that up and take it off. So we'll pull this clutch pivot bolt out. Now, leave the lever in place. It is kind of a hassle to get this rubber boot back onto it. Then we'll grab our new clutch pivot bolt and we'll put just a little bit of grease on there. Then we'll grab our mounting hardware that our hot start's going to go into. We'll put that into place and put our pivot bolt right through the middle. Then we'll reinstall this nut onto the bottom. With our hot start cable bracket mounted up, we need to install the cable to it. But on ours, even though we went with the bracket with the bigger hole, this cable doesn't fit inside of it because of this rubber boot, so we're going to cut that off. Before we reconnect the hot start cable, we'll remove this bracket, and what we need to do, it's actually tack welded together right here. Maybe you can see it a little better on the other side. There's a little circle right there. We're just going to drill through that so we can spread the bracket open, and that way we have this slave cylinder. We're going to route this through it. After that, install the hot start lever onto the cable and we'll mount it into the bracket. And when we mount this lever, we're using the new bolt that came with the clutch. Now that we have this mounted up, we'll adjust the cable. So when you adjust this hot start cable up, make sure you have a little bit of free play right here at the end, and we have a little bit, so that's about what you want right there. Then we'll take the lock nut and tighten it down to the adjuster. Now we're going to route the hydraulic line, and we'll just route it exactly how the old cable went. If you're not confident in doing this, it is possible to leave the old cable in place just so you can follow it. Again, we just drilled this out so we can fit this slave cylinder through here. But if you don't want to do this, it's possible to just have the hot start cable running through, and then you can run this down next to the bracket and you can use a zip tie around it to hold it in place. So we're going to route the slave cylinder down to where it goes. We'll just put it through these forks right here right now. And then we'll take our bracket that can now be split and we'll put this into place and remount it with that bolt we took off previously. With that bracket mounted, we can now put our CDI back into place. To finish routing this cable, we'll just route this right behind the radiator. And then we've got that bracket we removed the old cable from. We'll just run it in that same spot. To get this slave cylinder set up, what we'll do, we'll pull this rod all the way out just with our hand, and then we're going to take this and we'll hook it into the bracket where our clutch cable normally hooks into. So to finish mounting up the slave cylinder, we have this bolt going through our cylinder into our crankcase, and we're going to take that bolt out and mount this bracket right there. So now we'll take this bracket, we'll put it into place on our slave cylinder, and then make sure that this rod is still connected to this actuating arm. Then we'll take this bolt, we'll run this down into place. And we're going to torque this bolt to 87 inch-pounds. So we have this slave cylinder all mounted up. we should be good to go. We're going to test it out, but on some bikes that reuse the stock mounting, basically what you need to do, you need to check a free play measurement on it, and it'll have shims that go in between this fat part of the in between the fat part of the slave cylinder and this mounting bracket, and you'll shim it up, and I think the measurement's about 4 to 6 millimeters. And if you do have that style of clutch, you'll want to refer to our Banshee installation video, because that does use that style of mounting and it'll help you out. Now we're going to go ahead and check the operation of this clutch. So this one's obviously working. It feels really good. This almost feels like a 250F right now. I like it. So we'll go ahead and we're going to reinstall our mounting bolts for this radiator, the louver, side cover, and then our front number plate. Then we'll make any final adjustments to our clutch mounting. While I'm down here, we had a zip tie holding this radiator overflow hose to this clutch, to the stock clutch cable. So I'm going to go ahead and reinstall one of those zip ties right there. Now that we have the covers and seat back on, what we'll do, we'll move our bars all the way from side to side and make sure that our new line isn't binding at all. And the reason why we chose the stock routing is just to keep it away from anything hot, keep it away from any pinch points so it doesn't get damaged. Now the last thing we'll do is adjust this up. So I'll grab this 8mm T-handle, loosen it up a little bit, and then put it where I want it. So that's pretty close. And when I pull it in, I want to make sure that the end of it is a little bit in from the bar end. So this is looking pretty good. I'm going to snug that down. And something that's cool about these is they come with a breakaway lever, and that'll help any damage from happening to this lever if you do crash. The next thing we need to do is make sure we have this rubber boot covering up this nice breakaway portion right here. And you can do this earlier when you're installing your hot start lever. We just want to make sure everything was working correctly. So what we'll do is remove this 8mm nut on the bottom. Now I'll put this rubber piece back into place. Set our hot start lever back down, and then reinstall the nut on the end of that bolt. Now we can reinstall the zip tie that holds our kill switch wires. And that's all there is to installing the Magura clutch onto your dirt bike. If you have any questions, leave them down in the comments below. This is really a simple procedure, and if you need these parts, they're available on our website. We also have just about anything you could want for your machine, including OEM and aftermarket parts. So check that out, and remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel because we have a ton of other helpful videos on there as well. Thanks for watching.